On today's episode, Mike and Ryan talk about how Mike brewed a steam beer. Cheers. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Brewthers-in-Law podcast, where beer is thicker than water. In this podcast, we take a journey of discovering home brewing, craft beer, and more. My name's Ryan, and always with me is my brother-in-law, Mike. Hello, how's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah. We got here and we are just relaxed after a couple drinks from a local brewery near us.
Dragon Mead Microbrewery. Shout out to the Warren area.
Shout out.
Warren, Michigan.
Great beers. I mean, we got some, obviously did some work there, but enjoyed a couple beers. So for those who don't know, Mike and I are both amateur home brewers and excited about beer and home brewing. On Brewthers-in-Law, we aren't looking to act as authorities, but to share our experiences with you. The good, the bad, and the ugly bad things that do happen. And we hope that you will share with us so that we can all learn and grow and enjoy this wonderful hobby together. But to start us off, before we dive into our main part, which is a wonderful beer that Mike brew, beer. I had not tried this one. This is interesting. I am in the dark on this. But before we get into that, let's do our first sip. And I figured it's about that time of the year. What is a fall activity that you like to do?
All right. Yes. So first off, I will preface this by saying that I know that I believe at time of release it will be well into fall. However, at time of recording, we are just fresh out of summer, and Jesus, Haley, and I have just been waiting for summer to end. It was so hot.
It was
for so
hot
long,
here. And
we both love the fall. So we basically kind of ran the gamut, like right at the first week where the weather was going to be, a little bit chilly. We made white chicken chili, which I'll throw on that list.
All right.
And then we brought some cider and donuts home from the store. We plan on going to the cider mill.
Yes.
And of course, we have a little toddler who's about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Our little daughter Kaylin, and so we'll be taking her to the cider mill for sure. We'll be going through the corn maze and maybe picking some apples, and then obviously we'll bring the really good stuff home with us. So those are probably the two things I'm most looking forward to. There's also this kind of traditional thing that my neighborhood does every year. They throw this big smoke out where everyone cooks a bunch of meat and watches the Michigan State game. Obviously, that part of it.
They actually announced the schedule. It's Halloween.
This is true. Yeah. So that will be this fall. I don't really know how it's going to look with the pandemic and social distancing and all that. I'm sure it'll be a little different, but it's always a great time and always kind of a sign of the fall in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, going off what you said, this summer has been very hot, and I'm not from Michigan, but your summers here are some of the god-awful ones.
Your summers, okay. How long have you been in Michigan
I've been here for 10 plus years, but like I have lived in Hawaii, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in very hot places, but the summers here are by far the worst summers.
Yeah, we kind of get all the extremes.
You do. We get the hot and humid
to
summer,
like below
and then
zero for 3 weeks.
Blizzards. Well, I don't know. We haven't had a blizzard in a while, but like we get cold and snow and everything. I know, right?
We're liable to get one.
But going back with fall activities, I love football. It is football season. I know there's some issues, and we won't dive too much into that because I'd rather not. But I love just playing football, watching football. Yeah, like Big Ten's back. Yeah. Pac-12's working on it. Everyone else is trying to get it, and pros are going. I mean, we got the Lions, but I mean, it's still something to watch.
That's a great time to be like, I'm not really from here. I'm just gonna root for the Redskins.
I mean, I actually am a 49er fan. I grew up on that West Coast side, so I watched them for a long time back in the Steve Young, Jerry Rice era. And
I'm locked into being a Lions fan.
I mean, I'm with you too. I'm a Lions fan too you, but
it's a cross to bear, but we bear it.
It is. And I do agree with you. I love cider mills. Again, not from here originally. I never knew what a cider mill was until I got here.
Is that not a Washington thing?
Not that I recall. We were in the Puget Sound, so like I don't know if this apples didn't grow very well there and more inland.
Oh,
but
maybe,
like
yeah.
but
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. If anyone listens to this from out of Michigan, I'd be interested to know how nation/worldwide the idea of like a fall cider mill is.
yeah,
I've always just taken it for granted.
yeah. I mean, fresh cinnamon donuts are the greatest.
That is
Fresh cider
That's
is
the single
amazing.
best. The cinnamon donuts eclipse the actual
Yes,
cider.
they
in
do
my
actually.
opinion.
And then the one we go to usually also does fudge. So like we get some actual fudge too. It's what's the one in downtown Rochester? The
I don't know.
I can't think. I know you're not from there either. Someone will correct us when they tell us this. My wife most likely will.
Well, they can't correct you if you don't actually try and say the name of it.
She will still correct me because I'm still wrong, and anyone who's married will know that. All right, but let's dive into this. I am excited for this. I actually been talking to a few people about this in the Twitterverse. Very excited to try this steam beer that you've made, and I'm sorry I just gave it away, but it's a steam beer.
No, I mean it should be in the episode title.
That's true. It is. You knew what you're getting into.
Yes.
All right. So what we got?
Okay. So basically, I believe this is the first time we'll be doing an episode like this. So
Yes.
I just recently brewed a style of beer called California Common or Steam Ale, and I tried to make one by the book. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of this beer, but for starters, I just want to kind of talk about why I wanted to brew a beer like this. So there is, depending on where you live, you may or may not easily be able to find a beer called Anchor Steam Ale.
Yeah.
This is, and Ryan, I believe I know that you and I had, I gave you, I think your first this summer, but had you at least heard of it?
I have not heard of it before you
You
showed
have
it
not?
to me.
Okay.
So I know, and I have heard it is very difficult to find. So
yeah, it's brewed in San Francisco, and it's called Anchor Steam Ale. Traditionally, this style of beer was called Steam Ale, but Anchor Brewing has trademarked it, and so it's a kind of it's kind of a unique style in that it's very historical, but for reasons I'm going to get into, that is the one really prominent, like nationwide available example of this style. So
yeah, I was gonna say I've never heard of this style of beer. It's not a beer style that is very common, not like a lager or Kolsch or anything else like that.
It is literally called a California Common. So that was what basically because Steam Ale, the historical name is not available, California Common is what it was renamed to. So there are on the I'm a lot of this information is going to come off the BJCP website. There, for those not in the know, are an organization that kind of catalogs the styles of beer that are made there's sort of throughout the world and kind of describes like, what do they taste like? What are some classic examples? What are the ingredients, etc. So
basic how-to.
So basically this style is first of all kind of unique in that it is pretty narrowly defined around Anchor Steam, but there are some other examples. Sierra Nevada makes a California Common.
Okay.
And Flying Dog makes an ale called Old Scratch Amber Lager, which is apparently...
I love Flying Dog. They have some weird things going
really
on.
Good.
But
yeah, so
really
I have never seen Old Scratch around here in Michigan, but if you get a lot of Flying Dog, you could look out for that as well. And then there were a couple other that they listed that I've never even heard of. Shafley Pie Common, and then Steamworks Steam Engine Lager. So
yeah, I've never heard of those.
But if after this you'd like to try a steam ale, you can always just go onto the Anchor website and they can help you find a store. That was actually what I did because you used to be able to get it at our local Meijer, which is a Michigan thing, but it's a grocery store. And you can't get it there anymore. So I just searched my area code and they told me where I could get it. And there's a place like 10 minutes away.
I feel like every beer should do that.
Should have that.
You
right?
should have that. I'm going to call that out for all breweries to do that from now on.
It's a really big, it should be a part of your website if you distribute. But so anyway, so I love Anchor Steam. And that really was my primary motivation for brewing this beer. The other is that California Common, kind of as the name implies, is a style that is really unique to the U.S. It's one of very few styles that are really homegrown here. The others probably being like the kind of classic American lager. There's a historical style that isn't really made anywhere anymore called the Kentucky Common. and then cream ale is also very uniquely American. So I love that, because it's really cool to dig into the heritage of other countries, but it's also cool to make examples that like really were born and bred here. And then also I just really love Anchor Steam, and I think this beer is so cool because it's not out there unique. It's not. It just kind of has this sweet spot where it's like it's not too different from a lot of other styles, but yet it manages to taste distinct. So to dive into the history a little bit, Steam Ale originated in the late 1800s, and it kind of followed the discovery of gold in the Sierra Nevada mountains and Northern California in 1849, the famous California Gold Rush.
Okay.
And this led to rapid development of new towns in these areas. And of course, as people do, they brought, brewers and basically developed, if I'm going to live here, we're going to have alcohol, dang it.
I mean, that's a very, very key thing to have when you move somewhere. You got to find the breweries.
But particularly if you're spending your time digging for gold, because...
I mean, what else are you going to do? Right. You got to take a break.
Yeah, exactly.
The union breaks are there for beer.
So brewers in these areas, which they think, at least as far as I was able to find online, were largely of German descent, started making what we now call steam ale or California Common. So at the time, they used ingredients indigenous to this area of California, and that's part of the reason this is kind of a homegrown style. They were using what they had available to them in this particular location within America. So
that's the American way right there.
Yes. So, at least, it used to be. Now it's, now I feel like a lot of the American way is like, Thai food's great. We should make Thai food here. Chinese
Taco
food,
Bell.
It's
Mexican.
So, that'd be 6-year-old barley that was grown in Central California, and then hops grown in the Russian River Basin primarily. So those were traditionally cluster hops,
okay,
which I've never brewed with, but cluster is a hop unique to that area. Nowadays, Northern brewer hops are actually considered kind of the characteristic defining hop of California Common. So there's been a bit of drift over time.
Yeah, because they do make a U.S. version of those. We were actually talking about that.
Yes, yeah. That Northern brewer originated in Germany, and then it was it's grown in America now, and it has kind of become the characteristic beer of a California Common. But I believe that and cluster have similar characteristics, and I'll get into flavors a bit later. But so the first kind of key difference that makes a California Common unique is that lagers were really big at this time, but the climate of Northern California made lager production difficult because at that time it was very hard to find ice.
Yeah.
So you have to keep in mind that this is not like San Diego climate. This is Northern California. So it is cooler than Southern Cal, but still way above lager temperatures, which are kind of in the 50s somewhere.
Yeah.
So they would ferment this beer using lager yeast, which is normally lager yeast is fermented cool, but it would be fermented at higher temperatures than they were normally used to. And then over time, kind of specific lager yeast strains that were good at doing this were developed, and now there are kind of basically California Common specific yeast strains you can buy.
Okay.
I know Imperial Yeast, which is a company I like a lot, makes one called Cable Car. And then if you go through like Y Yeast or White Labs, you'll find one called like California Lager, San Francisco Lager.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of that's the steam ale strain, basically. Okay. It's a lager yeast that can chug away really well at slightly higher temperatures. And so that's the first kind of key difference. And they would ferment using these long, open, shallow fermenters that were called cool ships. So first of all, this is not the kind of open fermentation is not done a lot. So that's kind of a cool, unique thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that Anchor Brewing still does this.
Now, when you say open, what do you mean by that?
Like no lid, just it's not a closed vessel. It's just this long, shallow channel that is totally open to the air.
Okay.
That's my understanding of it, at least. And I've seen pictures, and it does appear that is kind of how these were fermented.
Okay.
And so
yeah, because usually with most traditional brewing, like you put it into a carboy, you seal it with a bubbler, and oxygen isn't allowed in.
Right.
But you let the bubbles from everything from the alcohol being produced can still get out without mixing oxygen in it.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So in that sense, using a coolship is kind of it's a unique historical process, and one of the so there's I think the name steam ale is kind of the true source is lost to time. There's nothing but kind of a set of legends that might be true. So the one that Anchor claims is that, according to Anchor Brewing, San Francisco breweries would put their cool ships up on the roof to take advantage of the cool night air.
Okay.
And so when the nights would get cool, the differential in temperature between like the actively fermenting beer, which the yeast generate a bit of heat, and the cool night air would produce steam. So their steam would rise up off of the.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very cool. It's a romantic image, right? So
yeah.
That's probably my favorite of these, just because it's the most romantic. So another possibility is that the beers ended up highly carbonated once they got into the barrel, and then they needed to be vented. And the venting process sounded like a steam whistle while it was escaping.
Okay.
And then the third option, which honestly, like this sounds like the boring historical reality that a lot of things end up being, but that the name, because a lot of these brewers, American brewers, were of German descent, that the name was borrowed from a historical German style called Dampfbier, which translates to steam beer. And it's a German style that's also brewed at higher than normal temperatures. So that kind of makes sense. In my head canon, though, it's the cool ships on the roof thing. Because that's just really neat,
I go with that one as well. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't care what history says.
Yeah. So then another interesting thing is that kind of the reason that Anchor sort of has such a large corner on the market for this particular style is that most of the breweries brewing this were wiped away by Prohibition, which took place between 1920 and 1933. So
why do we do that?
It was a failed experiment, right?
Yes, it was.
So you figure gold was discovered in 1849.
Yep.
These were brewed kind of through the late 1800s. And then between 1920 and 33, most of them got wiped out, with Anchor being one of the few, possibly the only, that can trace its lineage back to before Prohibition, that actually managed to survive.
Yeah, as I say, we got a couple bottles up here, and it does say made in San Francisco since 1896.
Yeah,
so
that would date to before Prohibition. So that's kind of part of the Anchor mystique, is that they're one of the few that can trace their lineage surviving through Prohibition. And so since Prohibition, this beer has kind of continued to be brewed. But again, it's the name has been changed to California Common, and there have been some changes to the recipe. Now most beer styles will use 2-row barley instead of 6-row.
Yep.
And so that change has been made. Most California Commons now you'll find use 2-row. And again, the substitution of cluster hops for Northern Brewer, which is now the flavor of Northern Brewer hops is one of the most distinctive things about the modern California Common ale.
Yeah. And for those, like the malts that we're talking about are just their base malts.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
2-row and 6-row barley are both, just kind of common pale base malts, and they literally refer to, I believe, the number of like clusters on the barley. And 6-row, I believe, is largely limited. Its use is largely limited to like American lager and light lager.
I believe
nowadays.
so. Yes.
And most styles of, you'll hear about just regular 2-row, like pale malt, but I believe even like Munich malt, Vienna malt, like other base malts and even more roasted malts. You hear specialty like caramel malts and stuff. That's all 2-row.
2-row.
So unless it says 6-row, it's kind of assumed that basically all malts used in brewing now are 2-row malts.
And they do say 2-row has more of the malty flavor compared to a 6-row with a little bit less malty flavor to them as well. I think
I've heard that, and I've heard that 6-row has almost a more like husky, kind of like corny almost flavor.
Well, that makes sense for American style beer, because a lot of American styles do use
I could
corn.
see that. Yeah. It would be interesting to kind of do a side by side at some point. But basically that's kind of the crux of it. So before I'll get a little bit into kind of the what the BJCP says about what this style tastes like. But I thought that before we do that, we could crack open a couple Anchor steams and kind of give some impressions on what we think this beer tastes like. So
I'll let you pour your own.
Yeah, I'll pour my own.
I will say this.
Well, I'll pour next to the mic so people can appreciate that beautiful sound.
Hold on, let me get I don't know if you got that. But yeah, no, this I love the bottle. It's a very old school bottle, very old school look to
it's kind of, it's not quite red stripe, the short ugly bottle.
Yeah,
but it
or like
is,
a Coors, an actual Coors bottle. Yeah,
yeah, it is kind of like a shorter, sort of chubbier, almost like a like Alaskan or like Sierra Nevada. Mm-hmm. It's got this real retro design. Yeah, I mean, you know that this is one of my favorite beers. So,
and I'm gonna keep the bottle cap from my my map that I have for states. I don't have a California one yet.
Cal. All right, so Ryan, I know first of all, cheers, my bro. I've had a bit more of this beer than you, so let's hear your impressions first.
All right, you can go in here. Very crisp. The maltiness is not that overpowering, which I think is the 6 row. It's just, it's not super there.
Remember, so this modern version, they do use 2 row.
Oh, they do use 2 row.
They use 2 row in Northern Brewery, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, their recipe has evolved with others, despite the lineage dating back. But it is interesting, like, for the color, because it has kind of a sort of a lighter end of amber ale range color. It's,
yes.
But I get a little bit of roast, and then it goes away quickly. And
yes, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
For me, like, it's not super malty at all.
Another thing that maybe I'll point this out because it's something I find really distinctive. There's this Northern Brewer hops are kind of described as having a minty quality. I get it like sort of in the back of my throat. After I take a sip, there's like this minty fresh impression that kind of stays there. I can buy that. Do you get that?
I do get that, yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is just a really, really, that's maybe the most distinctive thing about this beer. It's, kind of lagery, kind of ambery, but that sort of minty herbal quality that these hops have, the Northern Brewer hops, that's really, really unique to me.
I don't think I've used Northern Brewers, whether the U.S. version or the German. I'm assuming it's German version.
This was my first time
using
it, making this beer.
And you did use the American version? I know you said you had a hard time.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
I'm getting ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, so I guess I'd also say it's a crystal clear beer. You can read through this.
Very easily. Yeah, definitely no haze to this one.
Yeah. So I guess, anything else that you want to say about this beer?
No, it's a nice beer to drink on a hot day. I will say that.
Yeah, for the color.
Yes.
It serves as a beach beer.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
next time we go to the beach, you need to bring some of these.
I did. You and I had a couple of these on the beach. Apparently, you were a couple.
I mean, we did have quite a few.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah. You know what? I think it was that evening, so it was dark. Maybe you couldn't see.
And
which beer
if it's evening, we definitely had quite a few at that point.
A fair point.
All right.
But yeah, that is another thing I really love about this beer is kind of like the darker, like German European styles of lager. Mm-hmm. It's so drinkable, but it's not a light beer. It has some nice like ambery qualities, but it's really, really crushable.
Yeah, it definitely has that a little bit of maltiness to it. Since it's not overpowering, it's perfect.
It's a good beer.
It is a good beer,
and I think it's unique. But it's a beer flavored beer. Like it's not doing anything crazy. There's no fifth ingredient that I'm aware of. It's just a good beer.
Yes.
So on that note, I think we'll take a quick break. Mm-hmm. Enjoy a little bit more of this lovely example of the California Common Style, and then when we come back, I will talk about the process of me trying to brew a by the book California Common Ale, and we'll test the results.
Exactly. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from the Studio Demands It podcast,
where every episode we take a demand from a hypothetical studio,
which could be you,
and challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film based on the stipulations
or the demands
we are given. We talk about movies all the time. Particularly, we complain about the choices made in the films we've seen.
We're nerds like that.
And, of course, like any good nerd does, we automatically assume that we could do better.
Even with the demands and restrictions that clearly must have been put on by a production.
So head on over to studiodemandsit.com and listen to our previous library of episodes. Our library of previous episodes. Our precious library, Jim. Our library of precious episodes.
You're a pirate, Smeagol.
Okay. So head on over to studiodemandsit.com to listen to our library of episodes.
And submit your demand for a future episode, too.
So go do that.
Okay, bye.
Okay, end of ad.
Hi there, I'm David,
And I'm Kate.
and we're the hosts of another Zelda podcast.
There are so many good podcasts out there, and some of them in particular concern The Legend of Zelda.
That's right, Kate, and we are another one of them. That is actually the name of our show, Another
Yes.
Zelda podcast.
And in our show in particular, we talk about some of our favorite dungeons, characters, boss battles. We have top 10 lists.
Yeah, we do deep dives on game design and production aspects of the different Zelda games.
And we talk about our own experiences. We do some review episodes, talk about our challenges, our struggles, and our victories.
That's right. Really just almost anything that has to do with Zelda, we like to talk about it. A new episode comes out every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube.
And you can also check out our episodes on our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com.
That's right. All right, we will see you there.
Okay, bye.
And we're back. Oh, that wasn't actually it. Sorry.
No, sorry.
You're gonna bring us back.
Oh, I'm bringing. Oh yeah, I
And
do.
You're gonna
bring us back.
re-hand it off to me.
All right, and we are back. So we're gonna go back to Mike, and we're gonna get a little bit more information about the California Common, and then we're gonna taste his beer.
Okay.
Don't take too long. I want to taste his beer.
I know. Well, you gotta finish the steam ale still. So
I'm working on it.
So like I said, I love this beer. I wanted to brew an example. I wanted to brew a by the book California Common. Now, I know that we've had just this one example because it is hard to find
Yes.
examples of this. So I'm going to start, and this is the place I started my research. It was on the BJCP. So again, a catalog of styles brewed in the world. If you're going to brew one by the book, they are the book. So
Yes.
it
And
makes
since
sense.
we are brewing by
makes
the book.
sense to start here. So try and expand your mind beyond just this one example to kind of what multiple examples might taste like based on these guidelines. So
Okay.
they say about the flavor, moderately malty with a pronounced hop bitterness, which I think describes Anchor fairly well.
Yes,
The
agreed.
malt character is usually toasty, not roasted, and caramely. Low
Okay.
to moderate high hop flavor, usually showing rustic, traditional American hop qualities, woody, rustic, and minty.
Yep.
Like I described, I really get minty specifically.
Yes, I can get there.
And I want to contrast that with other American hops that are citrusy, like Cascade
Yes.
or Amarillo or
Citra.
So these are rustic, traditional American hops, not citrusy hops.
Yes.
Finishes fairly dry and crisp with a lingering hop bitterness and a firm, grainy malt flavor. So I think that describes this beer fairly well. But
Yes.
again,
As a non-professional, that's what I would say exactly what it is.
that's
They-
that's totally what I that's what I
knew
said.
that the whole
That's what I
time.
said. That's what this beer tastes like.
I knew that the whole time. I just didn't want to say it.
But so I think this is almost more useful for me, especially when I'm trying to expand my brain beyond just Anchor. The style comparison says it's superficially similar to an American Amber Ale, and which
Okay.
I know you and I have both had plenty of those,
Oh yeah.
and that's an easy one to find. So start with an American Amber Ale, and then you make specific choices for malt and hopping that have these effects. First of all, the American hop flavor is traditional, not modern. Modern here meaning citrusy, and the hopping is always assertive. So compared to other amber ales, a lot of amber ales use those more citrusy hops. This one doesn't.
Okay.
That's one big difference. Then, compared to an American amber ale, you're going to use a warm fermented lager yeast. So it's not quite all the way to a lager,
Mhm.
but it's going to be more lagery. So less yeast character, more crisp, more drinkable
Agreed. I agree on all those.
than a typical ale.
Yeah.
And then the malt flavors tend towards the toastier end of the spectrum as opposed to roasted. And that always is kind of confused. I'm not going to lie. Those can kind of mean the same thing to me sometimes. But I think what they're saying is it's like kind of, as the grains get more and more roasted and they get darker and darker.
Yeah.
I think like the lighter end of the amber spectrum is what I would call toasty, and roasted is like
The
you're almost
darker.
getting into porter territory there.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's
Or reds.
it's
yeah.
basically we want to tend on the lighter end of an American amber ale.
So just to kind of to wrap my brain around this myself, we're taking an amber, American amber, and we're kind of taking a lager yeast with this. So we're kind of hybriding a little bit.
A little bit,
When
yeah.
this was first made, it probably was a hybrid of a
This
lager
definitely
and an
is. Yeah, it is a hybrid. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Kind of like Kolsch or like Alt beer are
Yeah.
German examples where they do the same thing where they kind of normally it's ale yeast ferment warm, lager yeast ferment cold.
Yep.
Here we're kind of mixing and matching a
Vice
little
versa.
bit.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yeah,
You done?
that's it. I'm
Okay.
good.
So yeah, so
Mine is
then
wrapped. I got it.
one more. The comment I think is helpful. It says this style is narrowly defined around the prototypical Anchor Steam, although allowing other typical ingredients of the era. Northern brewer hops are not a strict requirement. So you could use cluster hops, which were the traditional hop.
Yep.
They're still available. I believe you're going to be using those in an upcoming brew.
I
right?
just did my Kolsch actually.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah. So you could use other like I'm not exactly sure. I don't have a ton of experience with these more rustic hops, but I believe like Crystal is described as having kind of a rustic character, Nugget as well.
Mm-hmm.
American noble hops, like hops with kind of noble hop lineages. Any of those could work, and they
Okay.
would all be considered indicative of this style. For me, because I'm mostly familiar with Anchor, I really want that kind of minty flavor.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
but
you make what you
it
want.
specifically says modern American and New World hops, especially citrusy ones, are inappropriate. So
Okay.
if you according to the BJCP, and again, you do whatever you want. This is descriptive, not proscriptive, but you're not probably, if you're trying to capture a by the book Cal Common flavor, you're not going to be using Cascade. You're not going to be using Citra.
Yeah.
None of that citrusy stuff. So I did a little bit of research on some recipes I could find around online. Specifically, I relied on a couple of recipes off the Brewlosophy website. What Are We Here For? And then their short and shoddy California Common. I relied on the Engine 97 recipe from Jamil Zainasheff. And then beerandbrewing.com has their Make Your Best series, which I think I've mentioned before. And they have a Make Your Best California Common. And so I did a little bit of research on that as well. And I just kind of want to note my sources here. So based on that, some of the characteristic ingredients I found for, again, a modern California Common are 2-row pale malt or pale ale malt, a small amount of toasted and or crystal malts. So commonly you'll see crystal 60 malt.
Yep.
So that's a fairly like middle ground crystal or caramel
Yeah, the
malt.
color, the number actually is the color. I actually did not know that for a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, the higher number is going to mean
Darker.
again, roastier. You're going to get into kind of coffee chocolate flavors. This is kind of mid-level. Victory malt, which is, I believe, an American malt, which kind of has these sort of biscuit and maybe like toffee flavors.
Okay.
Kind of roastier, so you'll use that in moderation. And then some real dark malts like pale chocolate malt, chocolate rye, or chocolate malt.
Yep.
And then again, those are used really, really sparingly. Just to add a little bit of color and a little bit of more roasted flavor without it being overpowering. And then obviously you're going to use one of the yeasts I discussed earlier. You can use a lager yeast and ferment it warm. I've heard you can also use an ale yeast and ferment it cold if you want, because it's the same. You're just trying
You're doing
for like,
this,
you're,
vice
you're-
versa.
Yeah, like ale yeast tend to be more expressive. You're trying to rein that in, but not all the way in, not lager in, just kind of halfway in. And or you can use one of these kind of California common yeasts. Like you've got basically San Francisco lager, California lager, or the Imperial yeast cable car.
Yeah.
And then of course non-citrusy American hops off in Northern Brewer. Those are kind of the characteristic ingredients. So after doing all that research, this is what I came up with. I made a 5.5 gallon batch. I used Detroit area tap water, and we do have really good brewing tap water. It's relatively soft. It's got like for people who are into water chemistry, it's got like a roughly 2-to-1 sulfate to chloride ratio, which means fairly crisp finish. It's not going to linger. So I made no alterations to that. And then I used about 70% 2-row. As my base malt. So again, 2-row pale malt, 16% light Munich, which is just a darker base malt.
Yep.
7% of that crystal 60 to give it those kind of caramely toasted notes.
Yep.
And then 1% pale chocolate to darken it, and just a tiny, tiny hint of roasted. And then about 3.5% of Belgian biscuit malt. And that that's similar in flavor to Victory, which I described earlier. But I had Belgian biscuit malt already, and I didn't have any Victory, and I didn't want to buy it. So use what you have, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
then I used German Northern Brewer hops because my local homebrew shop did not have the American version.
Wow.
Wow, yeah. It's a bummer to have to use, international ingredients to make an American style, but American Northern Brew is hard to find. So I used what I had. The flavor profile is apparently similar. And I used in total 4 ounces. I split it equally into 3, kind of 1 and 1/3 ounce divisions. And I added 1 as a first wort hop, essentially at 60 minutes.
Right at the beginning of the boil.
Yeah. So when you're doing a first wort hop, you throw it in before it reaches boil. And from what I understand, that can help with like boil overs not happening. So I added it in a little early, brought it to boil, and then it boiled for 60 minutes. Then I did another addition at 15 and another at 1 minute. Then I killed the flame, chilled, and then to back up a little bit, for anyone who cares about the process, I guess if you're not a brewer, I'm sorry, I'll get through this quickly, but I mashed my grains. I do brew in a bag, so I mashed for 60 minutes at 152. And basically, lower mashing is gonna have a more attenuated, drier finish. 152 is kind of a middle ground. So it's kind of a sweet spot. So I mashed there, boiled for an hour, cooled, and pitched at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, again, not quite the temperature you'd want for a lager, but it's warmer than you would probably use for an ale. For an ale, you're in the 60s usually. Sometimes into the 70s.
I'm about to say, when I brew, generally, I don't like get a certain temperature. I try to at least get it under 75.
Yeah.
And then once I hit that, but we do slightly different brewing, so because I add water at the end.
But so I fermented at 58 degrees for 4 days, and I use a mini fridge to control my temperature. So then over the course of the next 3 days, I raised it gradually to 65 just because I wanted to kind of promote, I wanted to make sure the yeast sort of finished out, got rid of any off flavors. I then left it for a while. This beer suffered a little bit from I didn't have a keg available for it. So after 12 days of fermentation, I cold crashed. So I lowered the temperature down to serving, kept it in the same, I should say I ferment in kegs. So I basically my keg is in the fridge. Once it's done fermenting, I lowered the temperature down to serving temperature, which is for me about 36, 38. Gave it a day, or 2 days. And then I find using gelatin, just to kind of clear the beer up. That sort of helps to just kind of clear up that kind of hop and yeast cloudiness. And then I had to wait another week after fining to transfer it because I didn't have a keg. We had to kill a beer before we could transfer. Then I closed transferred it using CO2. And so just to briefly narrate some stats, the original gravity of the beer was 1053, which is fairly normal. And then it finished at 1.03.
No.
1013. And so that works out to 5.6% ABV. So that's not a crazy high alcohol beer. It's higher than some light lagers, and it's kind of on the higher end of this style. The IBUs ended up, so that's the International Bittering Units, which describe the level of hopping and bitterness, ended up at 41.5.
That's about right.
I didn't measure it, but that's what the recipe said it would come out to. And that was kind of, again, on like the middle higher end of the style. I tried to hop it aggressively because I really like, again, that minty quality. I wanted to capture that.
I was gonna say, how does someone actually measure that? Is there an actual tool for that?
I believe you need to use science.
Science,
So,
of course.
I'm not precisely sure, but I believe you would have to send it to a lab, and specialized equipment would be used to measure like the alpha acids
Okay.
that the hops have actually contributed.
I'm just gonna let my app tell me what the IBUs are when it comes.
So that's what I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I do.
There are some apps out there that help you with that.
That was the IBUs listed for my recipe, and again, so the original and final gravity basically just the difference tells you the ABV, and they kind of generally give you an idea of how like heavy the beer is going to be. So a high original gravity means like a big beer, like an imperial stout or something, and then again, like especially if it finishes low, that's going to mean higher ABV.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into that too much, but so quickly I named this beer.
Well, I don't know the name actually.
I named this beer. Yeah, I forgot to print a label. So I hemmed and hawed on it for a while. And the day we were kegging it, I watched Kaylin just running around with a toy, just smash into Layla and just mow her down. And then later
Your
on,
dog,
while
poor
her,
dog.
Layla is our dog. And then later on, I watched Layla just truck stick Kaylin while they were playing with something. And so we decided, based on that, to name the beer Trampled Underfoot.
I love it.
Which
Oh,
I
that's
think
really good.
not only it's a great Zeppelin jam, but also I think it just describes the situation in our house. So this beer is called Trampled Underfoot. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. So at this point, I've described my process, my ingredients, and why I chose them. Let's try it.
About to.
Let's see what you have to say. Open up that growler, my man.
Opened for me.
You know, having just had an anchor, I think I got the color pretty
I
good.
was actually about to say. I think just looking at the color alone, just poured it.
It's maybe a little dark.
a light, slightly darker. It's slightly cloudier as well. But I mean,
It is cloudier, yeah. I'm sorry. I don't mean to
a
put
fine
words
tune.
in your mouth.
No,
but
yeah,
I
no.
think I did a
I know. I
pretty
agree
good
with you 100%. I was gonna say you just beat me to it. Yeah, definitely not read throughable. I can see my fingers through, but definitely cannot read what's on my paper here in front of me. Let me see. And of course, you made a mess. How? How on earth did you make a mess?
All I did was sniff it. I didn't take a drink. It's okay. It's okay. It's your house. It's fine.
Oh yeah, it's quite okay for you. The malt is almost like spot on. I will say that, like, because just having the anchor steam, it's there. Now I will say this: that mintiness that you're talking about, I don't get it. I think that might just be the difference between an American and the German.
Interesting. To take another sip, I will tell you this: the day I tapped this, the mintiness was almost overpowering. It was like you had chewed a stick of gum. It stuck in your throat for like minutes afterwards, like 10, 15 minutes. This is the sound of me ripping some paper towel to clean up my mess. But
I mean, but beers do that sometimes. Like, I don't know
faded-
when you taste it now.
faded very
did.
quickly.
Okay,
It faded
because
very quickly, I think.
last year we had this. I did a cucumber kolsch, in which the day I kegged it, it was phenomenal. It was one of the best, phenomenal beer for the summer. Great beer. You can taste the crispness of the cucumber, and then a week later, we all had it again, and it was just like something's not right. And it just the cucumber did not stick with it as well. And I'm working on that. I'm trying to fix that right now. Actually, I'm brewing that right now. But like, I think that's slight difference. Like I can slightly get it, but it's just not nearly there as much as Anchor Steam. And I wonder if that's a difference between
I'm a
the
little
two.
disappointed in how quickly it has faded because I really like that flavor.
When did you keg
say,
this?
I kegged it a week ago.
So that's that week. That week does it.
It does make a difference. And I will say, when I kegged it, my first pull was way more ale-like to me. The finish has dried out a bit. I think it's become more lager-like, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's just from yeast falling out of suspension over time or what, but I don't know. You haven't really described how you find the finish, but I will say whatever it is now, it was more ale-like. It was less crisp.
It's definitely crisp though. Like
before.
This right here, really the only thing it's missing is that hop, that same hop. That's the only thing is
I
missing.
tried so hard.
Well, I mean, you just couldn't
I
find
will
it.
say, pay attention as you've had multiple sips. To me, I still get it. And again, it's not
It's not there.
It's
It's
not-
not as much though.
to me. It's
And nothing against you.
It's
I mean, it's
almost
great
this
beer.
like no. I'm not taking it as critical, but like I can feel it right now. It's like right here in the back of my throat. It's a feeling more than like a flavor.
Okay.
It's almost this feeling of like chilliness, kind of right above my Adam's apple. That it's similar to me as to when I've just finished having a mint. Like take out the
Okay.
actual mint flavor, but it's that feeling, almost that like freshening
Coolingness,
feeling.
yeah.
The cooling,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll
a
give you
good
that.
word.
I'll give you that. That I definitely get. So, and I
Maybe
think
now
that's what
that
makes
I've
it a
said
great
it,
beer.
I'm just putting the idea in your head, but
no, it's still there. I agree with you. It's still very drinkable. It's still very good for summer. I would like you to also bring this to the cottage.
we
I'm
might
making a
have to
lot of
brew it a little
requests.
earlier next year.
Yeah.
I find this beer kind of dangerously crushable. Like,
yeah. No, it's. I mean, mine's half gone already, and it's just that easy to just to go down.
So let me ask this: if you were to take my recipe and alter it to make your own version, and again, like it doesn't have to be Anchor Steam exactly. It'll be similar to that, but it should sort of just basically capture the flavors that I described.
Yeah.
If you were trying to make a classic California Common, what changes would you make to this recipe?
Going off what I just had with the steam.
Yeah, but based on your preference, it doesn't it doesn't have to be the steam,
Yeah.
but something that's fairly classic and like plays to your taste. What would you change about this?
I honestly think you're good. I mean, it's slightly different, which is just enough for me. I mean, I do like crazy flavors. I'm trying to think.
Of course, you would add a fifth ingredient. Sure.
I would. I will say this: if I had to add a fifth ingredient, I actually,
sometimes.
you know what actually be really good with this? A little bit of heat,
Oh my God, you're right.
like a
That would
little
be really
habanero,
good. That would be so good. Oh my God.
a spicy steam beer.
Yeah, well,
That would be really good.
Actually, I never noticed. So, Dragon Mead, where we were earlier, has a beer called Ring of Fire that's brewed with habaneros, serranos, and jalapenos.
Yes,
And it's kind of this color.
yeah, it is.
I always thought it was a lighter beer.
I thought
It's
so too,
not.
honestly.
And it's so good. It's got just enough kick. It would be. I hate you, but that would be really good. But if you want to do that, I will gladly share the recipe and/or just split a batch with you because I would love to try.
I'm about to say,
that.
next time you do this, give me this a gallon. I'll try it with a gallon just to
Alright.
see what it does. I've never done spice myself, so I don't know how to make that work. But I can do some research to
If
figure
it's
that out.
undrinkable, it'll just become like a man challenge. Like finish it. It's like eating a jalapeno in one bite.
Yes,
Um.
that's not that bad.
So you wouldn't change the hops at all? You're happy with this,
I'm okay with it.
even though you recognize it's a little.
I
different
recognize it's
from
slightly
Anchor.
different,
Yeah.
but like it's I like it slightly different. Like I don't like finding. I don't want to drink
Right.
a Bud Light then have another Bud Light and be
Right.
like it's the same beer. No, I want slightly different. I want to be able to tell that
That's
beer
true.
apart.
Okay.
So I think you did a great job with this. And again, my mind is always thinking that extra ingredient. So
yeah, you are.
I think I said I've only done one beer without it
You're an
in my whole
adulterer.
time.
You're a beer adulterer.
I know.
Um,
So no,
yeah,
I like
okay.
this beer.
All right, great. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Haley, my wife, loves amber ale, so she likes this beer a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because I to me, for my notes, again, I got a very strong minty hop aftertaste right at the beginning, and it has faded hard
Yes.
consistently. So I don't know how to get that to stay. I don't know, like.
But it might just be the
Keg
type of
hopping or
hop.
dry hopping, or you're right. Maybe I would love to get American Northern Brewer hops next time because I hate a little bit that I had to use German hops to make a beer that I like for being an American beer.
And it's crazy, like you would think, because like I started using this app on my phone to help build my recipes, and so like I can get the ABV and IBUs and have everything on hand on my phone. And the app that I use, I can't think of the name right now, but like when you put in grain and hops, like especially hops, like it'll say like, "Oh, you said this hop. Do you want the UK version or the German version
Yeah,
or the American version or
Malt,
what?
a lot of malts are like that too.
Malts are too,
You know,
yeah.
Pilsner malt, for instance, you can get it from like 4 countries.
Yes. So it's crazy to think that there would be a difference in flavors, but I mean, whether that is the difference.
The soil
Makes a
difference.
huge difference. And that's one thing I've actually learned in my research with hops and stuff is especially when people started coming to America way back in the day, there were a lot of Germans, obviously, and they brought their hops and they tried growing their own hops and they tried growing what they grew over there. So like they would take a noble hop from over there, from wherever it is, and try growing it here, and it just doesn't taste the same.
Yeah,
but it still has
it's
similar. Yes,
but it's not the same.
Yes.
Because where you're growing, the climate, the soil, it does make a difference. No, so I would love to get American Noble hops next time. Honestly, it was a lack of planning on my part. I could have ordered them online maybe. I assumed that it would be easier at my particular local homebrew store to get American versus import.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out for this hop that is not true. I even checked a couple of others in the area, and all of them have German Northern Brewer.
Well,
apparently,
we are also in a pandemic, so it might just be different.
That is true, but American Northern Brewer is apparently fairly niche. I will say I love it. I love the flavor it contributes. The Northern Brewer just generally. I think you could kill like a chocolate stout where you hop the crap out of it and get that kind of mintiness. So it's almost like a chocolate mint, but there's no actual mint in it. It's a chocolatey stout where you're using like chocolatey flavored malts.
Yes.
But then you just get that minty finish. I think that could be really good.
I might write that down actually.
Do it, yeah. And
Actually would be true to style because I would not be.
I was going to say you could be a jerk and add real mint to it too. Because
no, mint's too strong. That's a strong.
No, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so other notes I would say. I'm really glad that you think I nailed the hop or the malt character because
yes.
So to me, I find the malt character very pleasant, very amber ale. To me, it's a little maltier and a little sweeter than Anchor Steam, but I think I may still be living off my impression of the beer the first pint of it I had because it was significantly sweeter, and then. Kind of along with that, I find it very easy drinking, almost dangerously easy drinking and light, but less crisp than Anchor. And I almost wonder if going along with what you said about the hops, it's not that I think Anchor might have a bit more hops in it to balance the malt that I don't have. And
it might just be the difference between the two.
Yeah. And I don't know if I would change that. Like you said, I'm not trying to make a clone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make a style that has one prominent example, but I do love that crispness of like, this is a marginal beach beer for me, whereas Anchor is like a definite beach beer. This is I could have 12 in the fall for sure.
Mine's gone, so
you might disagree. Yeah.
No, I think there is a sweetness to it, but I think it's just a lack of the mintiness that just is really
maybe
preventing or letting that sweetness come out.
Like a proper American. Hop the crap out of it.
Hop the crap out of it. Yep. Just like they do in San Diego.
Just like they do, yeah. So on that note, I think we'll end. I would say for me, this was a successful experiment. I don't always succeed when I try and brew a style by the book. I think I did pretty well here.
Now, what would you do? What would you do if you wanted to change this or could change it?
So again,
besides the hops,
I don't know. I like it. I would change the hops. I might scale back the caramel malts a little bit.
Okay.
I will say if I was trying to clone Anchor.
Yes.
Let's say that. From the recipe I described, I'd scale back the caramel 60 a tiny bit.
Okay.
I'd trade out the Belgian biscuit for Victory because the only reason that I did that was because I had it. And I might add a little bit more hops up front to increase the IBUs to like the very high range for a California Common because I do think that part of my crispness problem is the hoppiness. And honestly, I think part of it might be water too. Like I didn't mess with my water. I don't know what the water profile is in California. True. That's not really something. It's something I've always wanted.
That's the last. That would be the last detail I looked into.
It's something I've always wanted to screw with and never have. Yeah. But I could see that playing a role. Those are the things if I was trying to clone Anchor that I would change. With that said, I really, really like this beer. I don't know if I will change it the next time I make it.
I mean, nothing to you. Like I said, the only thing I would want to do is the spice, and I think that'd be a nice, interesting thing.
And I think you should, and I want to try that beer.
Okay, well, next time you make this, save me a gallon, and I'll add. Because I would probably want it at before you go into secondary. But you don't do well. Obviously, you don't do secondary.
I don't do secondary, but I could just. We'll make it happen.
We'll make it
happen. Maybe we'll feature it on an episode.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a spicing beers episode.
There we go. Yeah, I have never done spicy beers, so that'll be interesting for me.
So if you have any comments about this, either about our first sip, which as a reminder was about your favorite fall activities, or about the California Common Style, have you had anything that's not Anchor Steam? That's available in your area? What do you think about it? Have you tried brewing it for yourself? If you have any comments about any of this, you can find us at Brewthers-in-Law on Twitter. That's BREWTHERSINLAW, all one word, or on our website at brewthers-in-law.com. And Ryan, I believe if anyone wants to contact you directly, there are a couple of other places they can look.
So yeah, I'm also on Twitter. I am at Rainbow Kuhn. And I also, with my brewing stuff, I have a Twitter handle called Wise Old Owls Brew. That is my, I guess, brewery name.
It's your personal brewery. We are sitting in your brewery.
We are sitting in Wise Old Owl Brew right now, actually.
We are.
And like you said, of course, Brewthers-in-Law on Twitter. And you can just keep an eye out for different episodes. Leave us comments, leave us thoughts. Like Mike said, just let us know. I've actually just recently, today, was talking to someone on Twitter about it, about this exact the
style,
steam
California Common.
Yeah, the steam beer. He had it, and I was talking about him. Hey, I'm about to try this beer, and also try a new version of it and see everything. So, gotta let him know what it is. But yeah, let us know what you think about this beers, and if you found anything else. Like I've never heard. I mean, I've heard of Flying Dog, but like other ones on there, I never heard of. So
yeah, I would love to try another version of this style because I really love it, and I would love to get a rounder impression of what this style can be.
Yeah.
So, but in any event, enjoy whatever you're drinking, and until next time,
cheers.